So why don't we start, Lynette, by giving a brief overview of yourself and your career for the audience, for those who might be unfamiliar.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been doing this on some level since I was about 4 years old, and I'm 70. So pretty much my entire life, I've been a banker, a stockbroker, and of course I've been in gold and silver since I was 4 years old, thanks to my Uncle Al. But I think the critical part is that I started studying currencies and currency life cycles in 1987, and I discovered repeatable patterns, and I'm seeing that happen all over the place today. So we opened Zang Enterprises. I was with ITM Trading for 22 years, but then last year, it's almost the anniversary, we opened Zang Enterprises, and that enables me a whole lot more freedom. So here we are today.
Excellent. I want to start back in 1971 when Richard Nixon removed gold backing from the US dollar, because the amazing thing to me is so many people today don't understand that was yesterday in the span of human history when money was backed in some form or another by gold. Now, since then, a lot of issues have occurred in the financial system. Many people point to that as kind of the catalyst. Could you maybe walk us through that history and how that decision of removing gold backing from the dollar has affected the economy and financial markets since that day?
Can I back up a little bit before that?
Yes.
Which was when President Johnson, after President Kennedy was killed, he removed the silver from the monetary system. And actually, a sitting president coming out and saying that if anybody tried to hoard silver, that the government would crash the market. Amazing to me, but I think it was like a test to see what they could get away with, and they certainly got away with it. It's one of the ways that they make this transition is that they allowed the new coinage that had no silver in it to move simultaneously through the system with the coins that were all silver. This isn't old, but with the old silver, so that people got to thinking that it was just the same. And so you really have to look back on history, because they make these transitions by keeping them as seamless and invisible as they possibly can. I was a teenager when Nixon took us off the gold standard, and I remember watching on TV him saying that if you buy American, and that's pretty much what people did back then, we had all the manufacturing. So if you buy American, you're not going to feel any inflation, and of course we were told it was temporary. And of course, also, it's lost 98%, 99% of its value since then, so it was a big lie. But nobody knew it. Nobody realized. Nobody stood up and said, wait a minute, this is not okay. So historically, what he really did was hand over full control of inflation to private central banks, to the Federal Reserve. And what do they know? They know debt, and they know interest, and most of us don't collect interest. We have to pay on this interest. But that was really the next iteration. And now we're at the end of that. And actually, we're at the end of that in 2008. So here we are down the road with the setup for a reset into a completely new system, socially, economically, and financially.
Well, talk to us about central bank digital currencies for a moment. Is that where the system is headed? Because dealing with all of the debt and deficits, and all of the issues that have occurred within the financial system and the economy is a task that no government seems prepared to take on in an honest fashion. And no central bank appears to be willing to do that either. So where do we go from here? Is this likely to set up a scenario where some sort of digital currency will need to be introduced to kind of set the system in the favor of the politicians and the central bankers who are kind of running the show behind the scenes? And what would it take for instead gold and silver to return to the monetary system as real honest money? I see that as very, very difficult given that the people that are actually running things.
Well, nothing worth doing is easy, to be honest with you. And yes, that's where they would like us to go. And of course, we are welcome to just follow whatever they want, but that's a full surveillance currency. right? And so really what you do is you lose all choices if we were to allow that. You know, but the choice is ours. It's not done yet, and even though they want to do it, we don't really know how far along that system is. And you know, if their lips are moving, they're lying anyway. So for the past, I guess now year and a half, but especially since I started Zang Enterprises, and I have the freedom to travel and build a global community, I don't want that for my children or my grandchildren or, you know, great-grandchildren. That takes us back to feudal time. And I think that we have the choice just by converting your debt-based fiat into sound money, physical gold and silver, and holding it outside of the system. And if enough of us do that, I think we have an opportunity to have a seat at the table in the new system and say, no, we want it 40% backed. And what they're also doing, so that we don't understand this, is the way they're using backed and pegged as the same thing, and it's not. If a currency, or, you know, all of the backed digital assets that they're bringing out, if you cannot convert into that underlying asset, whatever it is, then how do you know that it's really backed? What it really is then is just pegged to the manipulated market. And again, you know, I mean, we saw this in Zimbabwe. Everybody's touting this backed currency, backed 40% backed, and yet they were able to do an overnight 44% revaluation because nobody could pull the gold out of the system. You have to have tools to hold their feet to the fire like we did way back when we actually could walk into the bank with a gold certificate and pull out the gold. But they also had Federal Reserve notes running at the same time, and all three of them had the same level of purchasing power. So we have to be smart, and we have to make choices that are not just for today, but are for tomorrow too. And maybe I'm crazy, and sometimes I'm gonna be honest with you. Who am I? I'm one little person. How can I make that big of a difference to change the global monetary system? I can't. But there are 8.4 billion people on this planet, and together we can.
Well said. I want to get your thoughts on the Brics versus the West narrative. We've seen Donald Trump come out and threaten tariffs against any countries that are trying to circumvent the US dollar, whether that's through a currency with gold backing or otherwise. Do you think he's serious about that? In my mind, that would seem to motivate the Brics countries to want to come closer together and accelerate their plan as opposed to discourage them. And there was a lot of talk last year, the year before, about a gold-backed currency being introduced by the Brics. It was rumored to be happening at one of the Brics summits. It never materialized. There's all sorts of ideas out there. The Brics unit, perhaps it's going to be backed partially by gold, partially by a basket of commodities. Perhaps it's going to be a basket of currencies. How do you view that situation at present? Do you think we will see, let's say over the course of the next decade, because I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but will we see some sort of alternate currency system, alternate payment system outside of the US dollar between Brics nations? And how do you see this whole Brics versus the West story playing out?
Well, I think that they just have different names, number one, but we're already seeing that play out. The Brics currency is really about cross-border trading, everything being traded and atomically traded, right? Which means that as soon as a transaction happens, everything settles. So I know they want to tokenize everything. I'm sorry, but I don't really see the Brics system to be a whole lot different because I don't see the governments over there taking better care of their citizens and the citizens having a whole lot of freedom than there are anywhere. But they want us to think it's them against us so that you have a common enemy and it's divide and conquer. And I want to do just the opposite. I want, you find everybody here wants the same thing. They want to have a safe place to live, raise their family, have opportunities, have real opportunities. I read about the unit. It's supposed to be 40% back, but again, not convertible. It is so key that people understand the difference, because what is pegging? Pegging is just using the manipulated price of the spot markets anywhere. So I don't really view it, frankly, as them or us. I think that whatever country truly comes out with a gold-backed currency, that you and I, as a citizen, if we don't like what we're seeing them do on Capitol Hill or anywhere in government, you walk in with one currency, you pull the gold out of the system. That's what creates those restrictions. That's what I think we need to really be fighting for, not just having a government say, well, this currency is backed by gold. Because how do you prove it? How do you really prove it? Do you know how much gold is in Fort Knox? It doesn't mean anything.
It hasn't been audited since the Eisenhower administration, yeah.
So, and it hasn't changed even 1/16 of an ounce. So how do you know? So yeah, I don't view that as a huge threat. Definitely power is shifting. But I say, let's take our power back. Let's have it shift in the right direction. Not from one bad government to another bad government, but from the government to the people. The Constitution supported the people first, and then the state's job was to uphold and support the public. And then the federal government's job was to support the states who were supporting the individuals. It's been all turned upside down. Let's turn it back.
So 2024, obviously a very exciting year for gold. Silver also performed very well. I'm wondering what you see as the main catalyst that got us here. There's central bank gold buying, which comes up a lot. There's retail buying in the East, particularly in India and China. Obviously, the growing debt and deficits. So I also would like to ask about silver here, because silver is a metal that I think the online silver stacker community are some of the most devoted, but also some of the most kind of angry, if I can put it that way, when it comes to the comments left on my own channel. These people tune in to watch videos about silver and then say, silver is garbage, I've been holding it for 30 years, it hasn't done anything. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the potential catalyst for silver, because around $30 an ounce is very respectable, but the $50
Ridiculous.
silver keeps getting thrown out there. I've spoken to people, Andy Scheckman as one of them, who believes it's one of the most undervalued metals on the planet. So firstly, the catalyst you see driving gold, and what would it take for silver to get back to previous all-time highs of $50?
Okay. Well, what I see being a catalyst is the inflation and the public waking up, because these global central banks have shifted their policy and actually been accumulating gold since 2005, which I think is rather interesting because nobody noticed it until 2010. But of course, it was the crisis that made it apparent to everybody. So I think for the public, we've got more younger people that are coming into the gold and silver market, which is so inspiring to me, because it's not us old people that are going to create this revolution. It's the younger generation that will do that. So I think that's also a catalyst for silver. And silver, most undervalued metal. Look, these markets are not a place where you can get any level of good price discovery. Everything has been turned into a trade. If you think when you pay your utility bill that that's actually supply and demand, think again. When you go to the grocery store and you buy your food prices, everything is being guided by traders. That's how the banks make most of their money these days, not from lending, but from trading. So I think that it'll be the inflation, because I think this year we're going to see a lot more and a lot faster inflation, and the public starts to notice it. So I think it's public buying that's going to push it, because central banks have been buying and accumulating it for a long time. But the other thing that I'd like to point out is, if it's so so many people are manipulating these markets. Why don't we still have $400 gold and $5 silver? So I think that is an indication of an expanding market. And that actually gives me a whole lot of hope. And I think both metals, I mean, you look at the fundamental value. Because one thing I learned from my Uncle Al, and when you're dealing with hard assets, is it always goes from undervaluation to fair valuation to overvaluation, like this continuous figure 8, right? An infinity sign. And so where are we now? We're probably right about here, still in undervaluation. And I say that if they were going to do an overnight revaluation, because that is when we will see it move toward its fundamental value. Because what gold and silver are the flip side of the fiat money, the debt-based money. So it's easy enough to go ahead and say, okay, how much debt is there in this world? And how much gold is there in this world, even with the new gold find in China, right? Anytime you get physical, there is a finite amount, period, right? So it doesn't really matter, but you look at this, and I know that gold is really worth somewhere north of $40,000 an ounce, and silver's worth somewhere north of $2,000 an ounce. So at 2,600, 2,700, 3,000, or at $30, it's ridiculous. Having said that, though, I think what we're headed into, and I think it's already begun, is the hyperinflationary depression. And I've looked at enough hyperinflationary circumstances, and you see that gold-silver ratio gap grow more and more narrow, but then toward the end of it, gold expands because gold is the primary currency metal. Silver is used in manufacturing as well. But gold is recoverable, silver is a diminishing asset, gets used up. So there is really no good justifications for the prices, but I think it's public participation that will push that. And I could easily see silver, I mean, it could have happened this year too. But what you can't control is how much gold and silver is created by these contracts that do not and never will exist.
Well, valuations aside, for me, the greatest utility of holding physical gold and silver is removing wealth from counterparty risk. Whenever somebody comes to me, because of the show I do, people sometimes ask me for investment advice. I don't give it, but the thing I do say is you need to have some form of physical gold and or silver in your possession first before you go speculating on mining stocks or other things. Because just that power of removing your wealth from the financial system, completely from counterparty risk, and holding it in your hands is so unbelievably valuable. So I'm wondering if you have any comments on that, just the way that gold and silver can help people to protect their wealth, not to make money through higher prices.
Right, and for me, it's not about prices. I want to protect and preserve my purchasing power. So a really, really good point is that this is completely outside of the system. That's why no matter what other choices you make, if you have those intangible assets, and there are a lot of people that believe in the cryptocurrencies. I believe that they are here to stay, but that they are a Trojan horse so they can make this shift, right? Because that's how they do it. They keep things looking as normal as possible. But gold and silver in your possession is virtually invisible. It's virtually invisible. Nothing else is invisible. And what they have in mind for it takes even that, if you allow that, and makes it more accessible, which means what do governments want? Taxation. They're talking about having the ability to do lifetime taxation. You need things that are just, you hold it, you own it, it has the broadest base of buyer. That's the other thing, right? This is used, both of these gold and silver are used in every single sector of the global economy. Well, let's think about that. What that means is you have the broadest base of functionality and the broadest base of demand. You tell me any other asset that does that. There isn't. So you become your own central banker, right? You're going to count on them to look out for your best interest, because if you are, I have this bridge in Brooklyn that we could discuss, right? It doesn't happen. They're not going to look for your best interest. You have to do that. But that also comes together with community, right? And the importance of community, because we are not an island. We are really all together on this planet, and coming together, we have the power, we have the strength. But yes, gold and silver in your possession maintains your ability to purchase, because this is a wealth transfer mechanism. If you have everything in fiat money, you will not be able to take advantage of the opportunities that will arise when this debt bubble becomes, it's already popped, when it becomes apparent. But there are opportunities ahead for those that are holding physical gold and silver outside of the system. Be one of them. Don't let those that are in power have all of the opportunities.
Well, thank you so much, Lynette. This has been a fantastic conversation. Before I do let you go, for those who want to hear more from you, tell us about Zang Enterprises and the work you're doing on YouTube.
Well, of course, I've been on YouTube since really 2015 in these markets, way longer than that. But Zang Enterprises is really focused on the mantra, right? And building that sound money on a global basis, as well as community, both locally, because I've had the luxury of time, right? I've been building the food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. Most people don't have that time. I don't think we have that much time left. So at Zang Enterprises, we are focusing on legislation. I'm getting involved in that because we have to. Everybody look in the mirror and say, if not me, who? And if not now, when? And then do something, become part of this community, become part of the solution for everybody. Because I know together we can make a very positive difference for the whole world. Why not? That's why we're here.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lynette.